Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to my show. Today I'm going to be talking about real estate and real estate investments. I've been doing this for about 14 years now. I started in Los Angeles doing property management, and before that I was in New York City doing property management. And back in 2012 I started buying properties. And today I want to talk about something very specific, which is buying properties on contract. So basically owner finance and creative deals. And what's special about doing owner finance and creative deals is that you're able to buy a property and basically use the seller as the bank. The problem today is that the banks are not very happy to lend money. They're happy to lend money, but it's very hard to get them to lend money. So it's especially good for people that have, let's say, a W-9 income, 1099 income. So if you don't work in a regular job and you have steady income coming from a paycheck, more likely it's going to be much harder for you to obtain a loan. So this is where contract sale really comes in and is the solution for something like that. And especially good for contractors. And I love working with the contractors. In my compañía, we have a lot of tenants that speak Spanish and a lot of Latinos. And we really cater to that target market because we understand how hard it is to get loans. And so we want to try to overcome it. And so let's talk about the contract sale and how it kind of works. Okay, I'm going to give you a very high overview and we'll also get into it a little bit more as we get in there, into the details. So when you buy a property on contract, the deed doesn't change hands. The deed stays in the seller's name, but you get something that's called like a cloud on title. You get a material interest in the property, and it's all done legally. So you go to the attorney, and you have a deal outline. We sign what's called an LOI, a letter of intent. The letter of intent will basically outline all the mechanics of the deal, the price, the amount of the down payment, the interest rate, the amortization schedule, if there are any other like property taxes, insurance, who pays it, when pays, and all that is detailed in the LOI, the letter of intent. Both the LOI, by the way, is a non-binding agreement. So when you sign an LOI, make sure it says non-binding, which really means that it's not like the ultimate legal document. It's just an outline. With that outline, you go to the attorney and then you really start working into the legal documents. Okay? So you sign the LOI. You have all the details of the deal, and you go with that to the attorney, and the attorney will draft the documents. Now, those documents are pretty much standard. They come from specifically in Iowa, from the Iowa Bar Association, which is basically the body that helps attorneys with all their legal paperwork. Attorneys have it easy sometimes, which is good. They have pre-made forms that they just fill. And but they are attorneys and they're the only ones who are allowed to use these forms. And so the attorney will fill the paperwork. You obviously get to review it. Once you review, the buyer and the seller, they meet and we do what's called the closing. And you sign the documents, and then you notarize them. And I will say that it doesn't matter if you have what's your legal status here in the U.S.? I'm not getting into that personally, but the fact of the matter is that anyone can do a contract sale. Anyone. As long as you have a valid ID and the attorney or the notary is able to validate you as a person, you are allowed and you get to sign the document, and the attorney gets to notarize it, and the document gets recorded. And that, I think, is the important part here, is that the contract is recorded in the courthouse. It's public knowledge. So anyone that does search the public records can see any contract sale that took place. It's all public knowledge. And so that gives you some assurance, okay? That gives you security. That gives you the understanding that this is not just like a scam, or it really gives, it tells the public that this transaction took place and no one can dispute it. So it's very good for you as a buyer, and it's good for you as a seller, because it just says that it's all transparent. And transparency in business is very important. We always want to be transparent. We always want to make sure that everyone understands what their side of the deal is and what they committed to and what it is that they are promising to fulfill. A contract for deed is basically when the buyer promises to fulfill a contract by making those payments over time, by taking care of the property over time, and once the contract terms are fulfilled, are complete, and that can take 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, 30 years. It all depends on what's negotiated and what's signed at the end. Once that is fulfilled, then the deed changes hands. Then you get to be the actual full legal owner of that property without the buyer, without the seller. That's when you completely take over. Okay, so I know there's probably a lot here that I'm throwing out. So we'll kind of go through it again and kind of summarize it. So contract for deed, you sign an LOI, and you go to the attorney draws the paperwork, you go to the closing table, you sign, it gets notarized. At that point, it goes to recording at the courthouse, and the transaction is complete. Now you become the contract holder. You hold the contract, and you get to either move into the house, or if that's a property you buy for an investment, then you get to start operating it, taking possession, renting it to other tenants, or using it yourself. And as long as you make the payment, everything works well. Now, we just talked about the contract sale and kind of how that gets put together, but there's a lot of steps beforehand that I think we should also discuss. And the first thing is trying to find an owner that's willing to sell on contract. Not everyone wants to do it. Most property owners today either don't know about contract sales, or they know about it, but for some reason they don't want to do it. It's your job as a potential contract buyer, or not even as a contract buyer, let's just say as one who wants to buy a house for his family. You're tired of paying rent. You're just throwing money to the garbage every month because you just keep renting for years and years and years, and you never really get into home ownership. And so it's time to buy a property, but the bank won't give you a loan. And so your best option is contract sale, okay? So when you make up your mind that it's time to buy a property for yourself and for your family, and I personally think that that's something that you want to do early in life, Now, buying property is not for everyone, and we got to say it, and we got to admit to it. If you're moving a lot, and if the circumstances are not right for you, don't buy a property. There's no issue there whatsoever. But if you know you're going to be, let's say, in Des Moines, Iowa for the next 15, 20 years, or even 5 years, I think 5 years, that's really what it is. If you know you're going to be in a place for 5 years, it's best for you to try to buy a property and live there for the next 5 years. If you need to move after, you'll probably build some equity, okay? It's not for sure, but there's a high probability that you will be building equity, which basically means that when you buy a property, there's a chance that the value of the property will increase, okay? That will go up. It's not a guarantee, and historically, it's been shown that property values go up, but like we are today, it seems like property values are going down. But that just says that now is the opportunity for you to buy a property. And it should be easier for you to buy a property, especially with owner financing, especially. So building equity is, let's say you buy a property for, let's just use numbers, $100,000, okay? There's a chance that that property will increase by 3 to 4% a year. So it'll go up. So you buy it today for $100,000. Next year is going to grow hopefully by 3%, let's say. So now it'll be worth $103,000. And then if you keep doing 3%, it compounds and keeps going up. So in 5 years, it could be worth exponentially more. Not going to get on the calculations right now. But that's one way. The other way that you build equity, which is super important, is when you take a loan against an asset that appreciates, doesn't depreciate. So there's a big difference between taking a loan for a car or taking a loan for a house. Big difference there. A car is considered a depreciating asset. The moment you buy a car, you go out of the lot, whether it's used or new, the value of the car goes down. That's kind of automatic. When you buy a house, the probability is that the value will go up. So that's an appreciating asset. It goes up in value, okay? That's the assumption. So when you buy an appreciating asset and you have a loan against it, okay, and every month you start making those payments, you're building equity, okay? And this is how it works. Let's say you buy it for $100,000. Let's say you put 20% down, so that's $20,000. So you have a loan for $80,000. In the course of 5 years, that loan will go down from 80 to, let's just say, 65, okay? And there's a schedule, which we can talk about. It's called an amortization schedule, which will predict exactly, as long as you make those payments every month, the amortization schedule will predict exactly your final principal balance after 5 years. So you put it into a spreadsheet. There's loan calculators out there. You put it in and you can predict exactly what your payoff will be, let's say in 5 years. So as long as you make those payments, it's like you created some sort of a savings account. It's like a forced savings account. And I think that's the beauty about buying a house and buying an asset that appreciates, is that you get to force save money every month. Every month you make a payment, your principal balance will keep going down, and over the course of the time, you're going to build equity. So there's two forces over here. The appreciation in value on one hand, that hopefully takes place, and then also the reduction in principal. So after, say, 5 years, your house is worth, say, $125,000, and let's say you paid everything on time and your final payment, you sell it in 5 years and your your payoff will be $65,000. So now you made that spread. You bought it at 100, you put 20% down, 20,000. The property went up, okay, in value. You're selling it for 125,000 after 5 years. And also your principal went down from 80 to 65. So that's another 15 plus 25. So it gives you a total of $40,000 net in your pocket when you started off with basically putting $20,000 into the deal. So that's one of the beauties of buying property with a appreciating asset and having an underlying loan that you keep paying down every year. Okay? So we understand what's good about part of what's good about buying property. And I think the key is when you decide that you want to go buy a property is don't give up. Okay? Don't give up. It's not the easiest thing to do, and it's one of the scariest things to do in life. They say that in life you do 2 major purchases. What are your 2 major purchases in life? One is a wife. No, I'm just kidding. No one purchases a wife. That was a joke. But the one purchase is a car, okay, and the other one is a house. Those are. It's known to be the 2 most biggest purchases that a person does in his life: a car and a house. With a house being number 1 and a car being number 2. The 2 most stressful, I guess I don't know what the 2 are, but moving is very stressful. That's also. And when you buy a house, there's moving involved also. So it's not just that you're buying something that you never bought before with a price that you kind of never... It's not like you go to Walmart, okay? And you also don't have refunds in property, when you buy a property. So it's just, it's very stressful. It's stressful to buy. It's stressful to move in. But no pain, no gain, okay? It's very simple. If you're not going to take the risk, you're not going to get the gain. It's very simple. And it's just the way it is. You have to get out of your comfort zone. Your comfort zone is your danger zone. Just remember that. It's contrary to what we all know or think, or the way we were taught, whether it's at home, whether it's in school, whether it's in therapy, I don't know, anywhere. It's all about being comfortable. Everyone wants you to be comfortable. No, don't be comfortable. You'll only grow if you are uncomfortable. That's kind of how it works. So you have to put yourself in a position of being uncomfortable. And buying a house can be very uncomfortable. And after you buy it, the moving can be very uncomfortable also. But all that can very well be worth it at the end, because you are doing something, and that's another thing we need to talk about real quick. What is an investment? What does it mean, investment? Let's talk about investments for a little bit. An investment is giving up something today for a better tomorrow. That's how it is. When someone wants to invest something, you sacrifice something today for something better in the future. That's the definition of investment, the way I see it. And you guys are more than welcome to bring more definitions, and I'm sure there are many more definitions out there. But what are you willing to give up now for a better tomorrow? That's the idea of investment. And so when you set off on your investment journey, and by the way, everyone is an investor. I know a lot of people think they're not, or I'm not an investor and I don't understand, but you're an investor. You're born an investor. Everyone is born as an investor. And I can explain. When you come to the world and you start crawling, you're investing. When you're starting to walk, you're investing. It's very hard at the beginning. You're gonna fall. I have 4 boys. I'm blessed with 4 boys, and God willing, a girl. We have a girl on the way also. So God willing, here we'll see her in November. And Having kids is an investment also, by the way. But kid, baby, wants to start walking, they're investing. They are doing an investment. They are going to try to get up, and they're going to fall, and they're going to get up and fall and get up, and they're going to bang their heads, and they're going to fall there and scrape here and all. But that's all part of investing. They sacrificed all these falls for the moment that you as a parent get to sit there, God willing, and see your child start doing his first steps, and you see the way they light up, and it's an amazing moment for everyone. That baby is an investor. And you as a parent are an investor also. We can talk about parenting also, but we'll leave that for a different episode. And so you start your journey in life as an investor, okay? And then after that, you start investing in education, learning. You invest in the way you eat, that's an investment. If you eat crap, you're going to look like crap. That's just the way it is. Or you're going to feel like crap, or you're going to, God forbid, get sick. So that's investing. Every day you invest. When you are driving, you're an investor. You're investing in your life. If you get to a junction and there's a car coming, you're going to invest another minute. You're going to sit there for another second for the car to pass, and then for you to go out safely. Okay? That's an investment. You invested in your life, okay? And I will also share with you that it's better to lose a second in life than a life in a second, okay? Clear? That goes to the driving. Better to lose a second in life, invest that second by waiting for the other car to pass, or for the pedestrian to walk, or maybe drive slower, okay? So you are more safe and you're able to see better. That's part of the investment. You're investing in your safety. So everyone is an investor, period. You go to school, you invest your time in learning and doing homework, doing those tests, all that stress, all that stuff, which I'm not a big fan of the school system, but we can talk about that also some other time. But the point is, we are all investors, and we invest all the time. You wake up in the morning, you drink a cup of coffee, that's an investment. You wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth, right? That's an investment. So don't tell me you're not an investor. Now, financial investments, that's if you take all the principles of life and you apply them to the financial aspect of it, you might have an edge. You might learn something. And maybe there is some teachings out there for us to learn. And so investing is what we're willing to give up now for a better tomorrow. And everyone has to be and is an investor. Now, it's your job, because no one is going to do it for you. It's your job to be an investor. Financially now I'm talking about. Financially. No one is going to come save you. Yeah, maybe your parents to a certain point. Maybe a friend will help you here and there. But at the end of the day, your financial future is in your hands. And if you're the padre of the house, it's even more in your hands, on your shoulders and on your head. And let's face it, nothing's cheap today, okay? Everything is very expensive. Inflation is very high. And so you have to really invest in your financial future. And going to work for someone is very important because you get the income. The question is, what do you do with that income? Okay? How do you manage the income that comes in? Do you spend too much? Do you invest? Are you going to save money to buy property? Maybe it's good for you to save to buy Bitcoin every month. I love Bitcoin. And we'll talk about Bitcoin in this series as well, a lot. Because Bitcoin is one of the best things that ever happened to this world. And the sooner you realize it, and the sooner you get into the game, the better. You have to get educated. You have to understand it as much as possible. It's very hard to understand. I've been doing it for many years, and I'm not going to sit here and say I understand it all, okay? No one understands anything or everything. So that's another thing. You don't have to think you need to know it all, because we don't know it all. Just, you have to release. You have to release that part. It's very important. Just know enough to be dangerous, as they say. Know enough to feel comfortable to get into it. And that's part of being an investor. There's gamblers, they're not investors. Gamblers are gamblers. They're gamble. There's a 50-50 chance, okay? A lot of people used to say to me, oh, you're a gambler, you like gambling. I'm like, no, I don't think I'm a gambler. I think I take what's called calculated risk. There is risk, and that's another thing we should talk about, risk, okay? There is risk, and the risk can be high, and the risk can be low. And remember, we said earlier, the higher the risk, the higher the reward. The lower the risk, the lower the reward. And you need to find a balance, because if you take too much risk, you become a gambler at the end. So there's a fine balance over there, fine balance. So as an investor, you want to be taking calculated risk, and you want to start slow, and you want to take little steps. So you have income coming in, you have a job, you work hard, you have money coming in. If you're going to buy beer and food out and spend all the money, obviously you're not going to have anything left to save or to put in what's called a store of value. Okay, store of value, very important. That's something like Bitcoin, like gold, like real estate. Store of value is something that you can put your money in, and you assume again, or you believe that the value of it won't go down. You're going to store the value. It's at least going to stay the same, if not appreciate. Which also, let's talk about that real quick. You always want to be beating inflation, okay? You have to beat inflation. Also with your income, okay? Your income has to keep growing with inflation. So if, let's just say, you make $50,000 a year and inflation is 9% a year, so you need to grow that $50,000 by 9% to stay current with inflation. If you don't, you basically you go below the inflation, and then your money basically goes, your buying power goes down. And you don't want that. You want your buying power to increase. So you need to outpace inflation. What is inflation? Inflation is a word that you hear a lot, and basically, in simple terms, it's the rise in value. Maybe not a rise in value. Yeah, we can call it, it is the rise in value. Yes, it's basically a rise in value, okay? So you buy milk. We used to buy milk, I don't know, let's say $1.50 a gallon. Now it's $2.50 a gallon. The value of milk went up. Your buying power went down. So inflation is basically when the market prices go up. Maybe not, we'll use prices, not value. Prices go up relative to your income, relative to what it was a year ago. And inflation exists forever. If you look historically, it's always been there. Inflation is basically when your money is worth less every year. And that happens. Whether you see it or not, inflation is very dangerous. It's like a tax. They call it a tax. Because you end up paying it, and it's very dangerous. Inflation is very dangerous. And in the last few years, we've been dealing with what's called an inflationary period. It's just prices keep going up relative to the income, and you left behind. The buying power is behind. That's what we talk about, the income inequality, the affordability crisis. It's so hard to get a house. It's so hard to get a car. So hard to get milk today. Like, it's so expensive. Everything is super expensive. So inflation, very dangerous. You got to keep up with inflation. You got to outpace inflation. And store value are assets like Bitcoin that basically appreciate and keep the inflation in check, or keep your buying power in check. So I love Bitcoin again. Let's say you buy Bitcoin for $100 today, okay? And then it goes up in value, say, to $150 in a year. That's 50% increase, which is not unheard of with Bitcoin. It can also go down, okay? This is an educational podcast here. I'm not giving you any financial advice. I'm just educating you. But you should buy Bitcoin after you educate yourself. And so basically, not unheard of for it to go 50% up. In fact, historically, it goes 60% increase in value year over year, historically, as an average. Some years, it'll be down 50%, and you're going to shit your pants. But you know what? Hold on to that shit, and you'll be fine. That's very simple. And that's part of being an investor also. Every investor has what's called an investor DNA. And you need to understand what's your investor DNA. What's your risk profile? How much risk are you willing to take? Investing is not gambling. If you have $1,000, it doesn't mean you have to put the full $1,000 into something. You can put 500. You can put 300. You can start with 100 and then wait a month and then put another 100. Okay? There's many ways to do that. But you have to get educated. You just have to get educated. We've been going here in many directions in this episode here today, which I think is great because there's so much to talk about and there's so much to learn, and it just takes time, okay? And you need to realize it takes time. Rome wasn't built in one day, and you're not going to get rich in one day, okay? And getting rich is an art. And it's not even about being rich, and it's about being wealthy, and it's about having the principles that are important for you and not having money in the bank. It's about lifestyle, okay? How much time can you spend with your kids? How much time can you spend with your wife or the people that are important to you? Okay, that's richness. That's wealth. Wealth, money in the bank is not good. Cash is trash. It's very simple. Cash is trash because your buying power keeps going down. So it's about getting into different assets like home buying, which should be your first one. Gonna kind of full circle here. Home buying is your first step towards financial freedom or towards the lifestyle that you want. You don't want to have a landlord come to you and raise your rent every year. The city's going to do it by raising taxes, don't worry. Okay, that's when the taxes done. That's why you get the increase in rent, because the landlord is getting I get the increase in property tax, so I have to pass it on, and that's inflation also, by the way. So we're all indebted to something, to somewhere. Okay, so but still, you don't want a landlord to come and raise your rent. Okay, you rather pay those property taxes. You don't want a landlord to tell you you can't do this and you can't do that, or it's time to move out, because they can do that. If you're out of your lease agreement, they can give you a 30-day notice and c'est la vie, I'll see you later. Why would you want to be in control of someone else if you can be in control of your own life and destiny? So if you know you're going to be somewhere for a few years, go buy a house. Simple. Sounds simple, I guess. It's not simple. But let's make it simple. I'm not a big fan of realtors, but find a realtor if you need. Get educated, that's more important, okay? Not a fan of realtors again, but they can serve a good purpose for sure. And go look at houses and find a seller that's willing to sell on contract. We have a lot of advertisements. We advertise all the time that we sell properties on contract. And so look for those people that are willing to sell on contract. Look for those sellers that maybe don't know they're willing to sell on contract, and ask them and say, hey, if I have a down payment, would you be able to carry the payments over the next 5-10 years? Come up with some sort of a solution. But get educated. So your first step towards financial freedom, is buying a house for yourself, for your family, so you can be stable, so you can have predictability. I think that's the most important thing also in investing or in financial freedom is predictability. If you can predict that you're going to be in the same place for the next 5-10 years, that property taxes are going to go up, that you have a roof that you might have to change in 5 years, that maybe it's time to do a little update to the bathroom or change a faucet, or all these improvements, which is a different thing we're going to talk about building sweat equity, okay? Basically, you buy a property, you improve it, now it's worth more. If you make it more appealing and you keep it up nice and you paint and you take care of everything and there's no deferred maintenance, that just brings more value to the property. And when it's time for you to sell, it'll going to be more appealing than some dump, you know? And so that's that. Okay, guys, I want to kind of wrap up this first episode half hour here. And I appreciate you guys listening. I definitely have a lot more to say and talk about. And I look forward to talking with you more. Thank you very much.